Hey everyone, how's it all going? Sam Mackay here. I'll just wait another sort of 60 seconds or so just to make sure everything's working. Just let me know in the chat if you can hear me and that you can see me. So hey Chris, how's it going? Welcome back. Thanks for coming along. Got a really cool session planned today. Pretty excited to show you what I've been working on. Some pretty incredible stuff you can do in Power BI, that's for sure. Super, thanks a lot. Thanks for letting me know. Hey Dana, how's it going? Okay, so what we might do is we'll kick it off. It looks like a few people are coming on board now, which is great. Max from Russia, that's awesome. Ian, awesome. Okay, cool. We've got a good crowd. We've got a good crowd today. So today we're going to go over scenario analysis. So, and I've got one particular example, one really detailed example that I want to show you. I'll share my screen in a second. But with the addition of the new what-if parameters inside of Power BI, you can now do this stuff, or you can now implement it quite quickly. Certainly, what I've discovered is nothing has changed in regards to understanding how to actually implement scenario analysis. Nothing has changed, but the speed with which you can actually create it has improved immeasurably. There's no need to have to create a table yourself, create a measure to harvest the selection that you've got. So on and so forth. So you can really create these dynamic scenarios really, really quickly. So that's a massive, massive positive, and I think Microsoft has done a really good job there. Okay. So my hair has grown longer. Yes, it has, because I haven't had a haircut, but I plan on getting one this weekend. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to talk through the solution, and I want to get your guys' feedback. So you got to let me know what you think. But this is actually one that I have just entered into the What If contest that is being advertised on the Power BI website. So if you go on the Power BI website and see the blog there, there's a bit of a contest running. So I've actually put this one into that context. So just give me 1 second. Okay, just let me know if you can see my screen, because I've got it flicking here, but I think it should all be working. Okay, cool. So what we are going over here, is discounting scenarios, okay? So this is an entire solution, and put your feedback in the chat. I'm interested to hear what you think of what it looks like and the feel of it. But essentially what I tried to create here was a really common scenario that any business would find themselves in, or any business that sells something. So like a retail store, for example. Now, if you think about a retail store, if you've got a number of different stores, you might want to see, okay, well, if I discount a group of products, right? If I discount some products, what that could potentially impact the demand, so the amount of people that actually walk in the door. And so what we want to do is we want to actually run scenarios and say, well, if we just create a subset of products, like, it might be if you're a clothing retailer, you might want to discount your hats or your shirts or something, and then you want to say, okay, well, that might improve the demand. That might improve the demand by, say, 4% of our entire store. And so we want to see, well, what does that actually do to our profits? What does that do to our profits in total, but also our profit margins, if that was to occur? Okay, so let's walk through like a couple of scenarios of what you could do here. So you can change to set up the model. You can actually change for any time frame. So think about if you wanted to discount over the US summer or something, you can change the time frame over to just the US summer, and then you could change to whatever store location or region you want to look at. So say, for instance, we've got US summer and we want to look at Florida. And what we want to do is we want to select a group of products here. So I'll select no products, all products, and then say we had a list of our products here, and we wanted to select, say, 3 of them, and we wanted to see, or 4 of them, we wanted to see, well, if we discounted these products by 20%, that might increase our foot traffic or total demand by, say, like 6%. And then, so you see here, we've got our discounted products on the left-hand side. And then we're analyzing, okay, well, over that time period, if we were to do this and this was to pay off, this is the additional profits over our budgets that we would achieve. So this is the cumulative information. This is on a daily basis, how much additional profit we would achieve. And this is a cumulative difference between what we budgeted for and what we could actually get with a scenario. So what do you think? What do you think? What this does hide, because I spent quite a lot of time actually creating this and thinking how you would do it. This actually hides, whilst it may look simple, it hides a lot of complexity around how you actually do it. And that's going to be the aim of today. I want to show you how I actually did it. So how you actually are able to isolate, just these products to discount, and then increase the demand on all products, not just the selected products. So let me know what you think. Is there any scenario that someone might want to run with this? The other thing I was thinking that you could do is you can actually just test. So instead of actually doing discounting here, you could also just say, okay, well, if demand increased in a particular store over a time period, so if we could somehow increase demand, what would that also do to our profits? So it's just infinite number of, in this particular example, there's infinite number of scenarios you can run. You can run it over any time frame. You can run it for any of your locations. So you think about, if you're a retailer, you could actually put this out to your regional managers and say, or your category managers and say, well, if you can go and test your marketing initiatives, go and test what promotional activities you might want to do in particular stores and see how that might actually improve sales. And then you could actually, so you're almost trying to predict what would happen, and then you can actually see, well, did it actually happen over time? Cool. Okay, so what I'm going to do, if there's no one's got any thoughts or feedback there, I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to show you how to do it. Now, the hardest thing here, the hardest thing that is not an easy concept to understand, is we need to isolate elements in these calculations, right? Because we need to discount products we select. So we need to dynamically go and figure out which products we've selected and then only discount those, right? Internally within DAX. But then we also are increasing demand. So we've got another element that we need to shock, right? And so we need to isolate, say, the demand factor inside our calculations to across all products, right? So not just the ones that we're discounting. So there's a little bit to that. There's a little bit to that. Now let's now start from scratch, and I'm going to walk you through how I did it. Now, what I am going to do is I've already set up some of it, so I'm not going to do every single calculation because this took me a long time to build. But I'm going to go through the key parts of it. Now, one, I know some of you are probably thinking, can we get hold of this model? Well, I'm unfortunately not going to give out this model because I'm only going to make this available to people who have actually purchased the definitive guide to Power BI from the Enterprise DNA online portal. But what I will do is I'll hand out this so you can actually go and practice it if you want. So I'll hand out what we eventually create here. I'll send that out after the session. Okay, cool. So what we need to do. Now, I've already set up some information here. I've already set up my budgets. So what I want everyone to think about is we're in 2017. We're sort of at the beginning of 2017, and we're trying to forecast what would happen over 2017. So I've had to budget or project numbers forward, right? So what I've done is I've gone and set up some calculations here where basically I've just taken my sales from last year and I've projected them forward. So that's all I've done. I haven't done anything like bringing in forecasting data. I've just generated it from our historical information. So you could do that a number of different ways, but in this case, that's how I've done it. Now, let's first of all set up our what if parameters, right? So does everyone know about this new feature up in the modeling ribbon? Historically, if you've looked at any of my videos on YouTube or Enterprise DNA TV, you would have seen me actually generate these tables of information for scenarios. But what you can do now is you can actually create them on the fly automatically. So I'm going to go and call this demand changes. And I'm going to go decimal number, and I'm going to go minimum of 0.0 minus 0.06. So you can generate a range of different things here. So, and then I'm going to go an increase of 2%, and I'm going to do an increment of 2 and start with 0. And so I'll show you what actually. If the screen is blurry for you, just make sure that you're on HD or you've got the highest resolution in YouTube, because I'm looking at it and it looks fine at my end. So maybe also log out and log back in. Okay, cool. So so now I've created that parameter. I just want to show you what actually happens in the background here. So you see here, demand changes actually create. So I always call them supporting tables. So demand changes creates that is now an automated supporting table where we can see the underlying data, right? So really quickly has it created this table for us, and it took us about 10 seconds, when in the past it maybe have taken a minute to create. And so we can change the format here. Now we have this really small table where we can very quickly calculate or capture the demand change that we input into our model. So those of you who've been following some of my videos on YouTube, what do you think about this new feature? I mean, I think it's incredible how easy they've made it. They've also created the selected value function, which is which means that we don't have to write that if has one value logic, which is seriously awesome. It's just amazing how quickly they've enabled us to create this stuff. Okay, cool. So now through this slider, we can change the demand or the demand factor in our calculation. Okay, so I've also got to change. We've also got to create the discounting value parameter. So I'm going to go discounting value. I'll just call it discounting. I'll just call it discounting, and then I'll go decimal number minus 30, and then I'm going to go up to. So cool. So now we can discount up to 30% here. I'm just going to add that, and then we've got just do exactly the same thing. Who's tried out the what if parameter? Let me know in the chat. Okay, cool. So now we've set it up. Right? You've got to do a bit of setup here. That's the key, and then we can now change this factor as well. I'm just going to do one last tidy up where I actually change the table here into percents. And so really quickly now, you can create multiples of these, right? So in this case, we've kept it relatively simple. We're actually only going to change the discounting and the demand. Okay, how are we going? How are we traveling? Not much feedback on the chat today. Right, so what do we have to do now? Now we have to, for every single day in 2017, so I'm just going to set this up in a table here. Those of you who have listened to me before, I'm really massive on just setting things up in tables as you learn, so you actually understand what's going on. So I've got my date here, and I've got my sales budgets here, right? So we need to via a selection of our products, right? So I'm just going to create a filter here. Via a selection in our products, we need to somehow capture which products we're selecting and then discount those, and then bring this discount variable into our selection. So that is not actually that, it's actually not that easy to actually do this. So just give me a second. And because we can actually select multiple products as well, right? So what we have to do, we have to create a calculation or a measure which calculates our which looks to see what is selected and then applies this discount to the pricing variable. Okay. Cool. Thanks for feedback, guys and girls. Okay, so let's walk through how to do it. First of all, I'm going to create another measure table here, because I'm also really big on creating these measure tables which break up or allow you to organize your measures really effectively. Cool. So what we need to do is we need to run a calculation which is for discounted sales. Okay, so I'm just going to type this out. I'm going to go discounted sales here. Who's used variables? Variables are huge, right? Variables are, if you can implement variables in your calculations, I absolutely 100% would. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. And I'm going to call this discounted products. Now I'm going to use, what I'm creating here is I'm actually creating a table function, right? I'm going to use this function called intersect, and I'm going to type it out and I'm going to show you why I'm using it in a second. But understanding what intersect does is something I would highly recommend, because it does bring in some really cool nuances in how you can run calculations. And so then I'm going to go return. And then I'm going to just type out my actual function that I want to do, and I'm going to go calculate. And this is where the trick comes in. So I need to go sumx, sumx sales. So I'm creating an iterator here. And then within here, I'm going to write some pretty advanced logic. So I'm going to go sales quantity times by 1 plus the demand change, right? So you see here, this is where we're bringing in our what if scenario. So 1 plus the demand change value times by the related, because our price doesn't actually sit inside our sales table, it sits in our products table. And then I'm going to go current price. And then guess what I need to do here? I need to input our other discount. This is where the discounting value comes in. So I'm going to go 1 plus the discounting value. And I'm going to round that off and X comma there, and then check this out. I'm going to then put my discounted products, right? Like so. Okay, so there's a little bit to this function, right? This is not an easy function. I totally understand. Now we have a question: why use a variable? Well, you don't have to. I just think that it makes your code looks way cleaner. Okay, so that's my recommendation for you. So what are we doing here? Well, what intersect does is it goes and looks at what products we have selected, and then matches them up to the entire products, regardless of what we selected. And then whatever remains is what we leave in the context, and then we go and run this function here. Now, understanding what variables does is also, what iterators do is incredibly important, just generally in understanding DAX formula inside of Power BI. But inside of here is where we can isolate, because you've got to think, what are we doing with iterators? We're iterating through every single row. And if we do that, we can isolate factors inside of our tables that allow us to shock them with these what if parameters, right? And so demand is going to change what quantity is bought, right? So we can actually times the quantity by the demand, and then that's going to shock the demand side of our calculation. We can isolate the price, and that's obviously what we need to isolate for the discounting variable or the discounting parameter. And so for every single row, we are looking through only the products that are selected, and we're saying for the quantity, increase them or change them by the demand parameter. And then if they are also selected, we want to change them by the discounting factor or parameter as well. Okay. So a little bit there, and look, if it doesn't totally make sense now, don't worry. You can obviously watch the replay of this and walk through exactly this formula from the resource that I send out. But this is a really cool concept, because check out what happens because we have to now. So if I go and one other thing I've got to do is I have to actually project this out, because this is actually looking at just this year, but we actually we're trying to project here. So I'm just going to put a formula here like so. So you'll see now that this discounted sales, right? This discounted sales now actually changes for the selections that we have made. So you see how it changes like that. Now, here's the hard part. We need to isolate what we don't select, right? And that is not easy, because inside of Power BI, we have this natural filtering which takes place. And we need to somehow say, well, disregard what we've got selected, disregard that, and then go and iterate through every single product which is not selected and only impacted by demand. So certainly not that easy. So this is how we do it. Now, instead of me writing it out, I want to speed things up a little bit, and I'm actually going to put a new measure inside of here. And I'm going to walk you through it. Now, the opposite of intersect is this function called accept, okay? And so what accept does is it allows us to iterate through. So what this all does is it iterates through every single product, regardless of what context we have or what we have selected in here. And it evaluates, well, is it not selected, right? So what this values does is this values creates a table of what we do select, and this all is a table of everything that is just everything, and then accept retains a table of all the ones that is not selected. So hopefully that makes sense, because there's a little bit to that. But essentially all this is doing is this accept is creating the table of all of our non-selected products. And then we're actually putting it through the same pattern, but only changing the demand, right? Because this is what we're trying to achieve with this scenario, is we're trying to shock all of our products for the demand change via only discounting a few products that we select, okay? And so I've created that, and then I need to project this out. I need to project this out forward as well, just like we did for that last one. So I'll just quickly do that. Now check out this table, okay? Check out this table and what it does. So now, this is the core of what we're trying to achieve here. This is the core thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to discount the products we select, but then change the demand of all of our products. So now we can, so say we select nothing, right? Say we select nothing, and we put this to 0, and we put this to 0. So everything's going to be exactly the same as what we have budgeted. But now I'm going to select a few products here. I'm going to select 4 products, and I'm going to discount them. I'm going to discount them by 20%. So you're going to see that these products have been broken out here, and we have discounted them by 20%. And you now see that, and the ones we haven't discounted, they are just exactly the same. But now check out this column here. If I increase this, you're going to see that this actually grows. This actually increases because the demand for all of our products has been increasing. So without going into too much more detail there, this is the key formulas to actually making this work, is isolating which products you select, and then shocking those factors within that, and then isolating what is not selected, and then only shocking the demand. So what do you think? What do you think? How does everyone feel about implementing that? Did everyone understand that? Does everyone know how you could actually implement similar type of logic in your own environments? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly run through all the other additional things that I did to actually create this dashboard. Let me know in the chat. Okay, cool. So what we need to do from here, is we need to just finish it off. Obviously, we want to compare our current sales versus our budgeted sales, right? So what I need to do is I need to create another measure inside of here, which is discounted sales plus our non-discounted sales. So I've created a 2017 scenario sales, and all I've done is because we need to see, okay, well, what is the ultimate scenario, right? What values do we get if we actually do this? If we actually do this exact scenario that we've created for ourselves? Well, we need to. We've isolated the discounted, we've isolated the non-discounted, we've placed the shock parameters inside of them. Now we need to count them up, and now we can see, okay, well, on this particular day, where if we actually did this, we would have made 37,000 versus 32,000, and so on and so forth. Okay, cool. So then we need to keep going though, because if you think about the example that I showcased, this is actually profits, right? This is not actually sales. This is profits. So we need to actually dive into profits further, or we need to dive down into profits. Now, what I've done in this case, and if you wanted to make this even more complicated, you could change the costing structure inside of your calculation. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to keep costs the same. I'm going to create another measure here. And all I did is I'm going scenario sales minus costs. So I'm saying costs stay constant. So if there was an increase in sales and your costs stayed the same, you're going to have an increase in profits, right? And so I'll bring that into my model. And so now we can see, well, this is going to be our profits with this scenario. What is our profits without this scenario? And so now you can see the change between our profits that we had without any scenarios running on them versus with all these different scenarios that we can place on our data. Cool. Okay, so things are looking pretty good. Things are looking pretty good here. Now we've got what we need. We've inputted our parameters. We've got the values that we need. Now we just need to set up the visualizations. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. That is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to really quickly create a few other things in here. So we actually want to see, well, what's the difference, right? What's the difference between our scenarios and our actual profits? So I'm going to create another measure here and bring that in. So now we can actually see the difference. So remember, we can dynamically change these around really quickly and see what the actual impact is on a daily basis. So I'm going to create, so that's fine. Okay, cool. So let's create our visualizations now. The last thing we need to do here, is we need to create some cumulative totals, right? And so this is the cumulative total pattern. I go into this a lot, and I utilize this a lot in my videos. So if you've watched a few, you will know what this is. But I highly recommend to review it. It's a really good pattern that you can use over and over again. And I'm just going to quickly create these other ones that we need. So I've got my scenario profits here. And with this, we can really quickly create some visualizations, right? So I'm going to go cumulative profits versus my scenario profits. Change it into an area chart. And then I can create a chart here, which actually just analyzes on a daily basis how we actually perform. I want to bring in my date analysis, so I can actually change the time frame. Maybe we actually want to only look at, so leading up into Christmas, right? In New Zealand, we might want to create some. We might want to do some scenario analysis for that. So some discounting for Christmas sales. And then what we also want to do is bring our products up the top there. We also want to create a calculation which looks at cumulatively the difference between our profits and our scenarios. So I'm just going to quickly create that. And so with all the stuff, we can, we could go on forever, right? We could go on forever. I guess the main thing that I wanted to show here, I'll just darken the background a bit. Cool, thanks for the feedback, team, that's great. So what we can do here is, I'll just sort this out a little bit. So now, even based on this, right? Even based on this, we can showcase a lot of our the things that we wanted to showcase. So I guess the first thing is, I'm just going to quickly set this up. The first thing we need to do is we need to set our time frame, right? So say, for instance, we wanted to run some discounting for the back half of 2017, and we wanted to do this for Florida, and we wanted to discount, say we wanted to discount these particular products. And say we wanted to discount these products 20%, and we thought that the increase in demand would be 4% across our retail stores in Florida. And so really quickly, right, we can see that this is going to increase. This is going to increase our profits by, well, our profits are going to be 569,000. And then we could also have a look at, okay, well, what's going to be the change there? The change is going to be an additional 45,000 is what we would make if we actually did this and this paid off. And then we could change it to, we could have a look, okay, well, what sort of impact would that have in New York if we did that? Well, 35K. Well, what if we did it across every single retail store? Well, 177K. So what do we think? What do we think? I've been talking a bit there, so I don't want to just bang on the entire time. I'm just going to flick back to me in a second here. Give me 1 second. Cool. So what does everyone think? What does everyone think? I can go back to the example in a second, but the idea here was to showcase the pattern, right? The technique that you needed to use to actually implement that. Now, the key thing, the absolute key thing with scenario analysis is you need to find ways to isolate the variables that you want to shock. That's the key thing that you got to think in your mind to make it work. Now, having a really good understanding of iterators is basically the most important thing to be able to do that, because you want to be able to isolate things on a particular row and then shock them that way. So that's I guess the key thing that I wanted to highlight there in terms of scenario analysis, and showcasing this example is how you can actually take it really to the extreme. Now, there was a few intricacies there that you needed to get your head around, but if you can get your head around those, well, I mean, you can achieve so much. You can achieve some really awesome insights. I mean, it's in creating this example, I immediately have thought of 20 more that I could do. I mean, you could do this on anything. You could do this. You could run things on demand, costs, margins. Think of any core calculation that you might do on your data. You could actually run a scenario on it. It's all about isolating those key factors or those key variables. So what does everyone think? What does everyone think? I can showcase some additional examples. I can answer a few questions on this. I'd like to stay on topic if we can. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions on this? Any thoughts on how you would implement this? Just let me know in the chat, and we can go over it. What I'll do is I'll actually no, I'll just wait until we have a question. So Kieran's asked, is there a way to validate calculations in DAX? Well, unfortunately, there really is no way. I mean, unless you have a really good understanding of DAX. I mean, as you get more advanced in DAX, you have to, the only way to validate is to either try and break up the formulas, break up like what's happening in the table function or what's happening in the expression. But I find the key to understanding DAX is to visualize. You have to visualize or visually understand what the engine, the calculation engine, is actually doing and behind the scenes to get the result. It's the only way, in my opinion. And the only way to get there is by practice. Starting easy, starting with relatively simple concepts, and then gradually understanding what filters do, understanding what calculate does, understanding what combinations of patterns do, so on and so forth. And then that enables you to get a much better understanding of what's actually happening, or visualizing what's happening in the calculation engine. That's my big tip. How are we going? Any other questions that we we could I could dive into for everyone that's watching? How did everyone go in understanding those concepts? Is there anything that I can review for everyone? What I will do is I will share my screen again. Can anyone think of a way that you might improve? You could improve this model. What additional information could you add to this? Also for future, what are some, because I do plan on actually making an entire course on scenario analysis. What sort of scenarios would you want to run? Which sort of scenarios in your own environments could you possibly want to run or want to know? Because if you think about what we're doing with this sort of technique, is we are actually, it's almost like predicting. We're able to predict what might happen if we actually input some of these, or actually put into action some of these strategies. And that's what I love about scenario analysis is you're not just reporting on historical information, which happens in 99% of the time in organizations. You're actually forecasting or actually strategizing about what could happen if you did something. And so that's that's a really cool thing about these techniques. And really it just showcases how incredible Power BI is. Don't ever think that Power BI is just a visualization tool. It is an incredibly powerful analytical engine. All you've got to do is just know how to utilize it or implement it with DAX functions. So we've got Craig's asked, I think a scenario for a new product with no sales history is interesting. Okay, Craig. So what sort of, so would you want to see, okay, if you sold this many products, how much profit would you achieve, or what sort of scenarios around that? And then Max has asked, we do a lot of scenarios with different current exchange rates. Yeah, that's a really good example, actually, an awesome example of where scenario analysis would be fantastic, because you could shock all of your exchange rates, or you could, because everything's all exchange rates are generally quoted against the USD, you could shock the USD, for example, and then see what impact that would have in your currency rates, and then see how that would actually impact your profits. So that's a seriously cool example, and I love it. I'll think about how you could actually implement that as well. So slow moving product. The other scenario that I think would be fantastic to implement is inventory. So around inventory. So say for instance you've got, and I think Karan, you've touched upon this. So say you've got a range of different products, and some products don't sell very well, and you just want to get rid of them. And so you want to understand, okay, well, or you want to test, like, how can you get rid of these? Like, and how fast can you get rid of these? And so what you might want to do is isolate. I mean, you could actually do this with this. Think about it. You could actually do it with concepts very similar to what I've implemented here. You want to see, okay, well, say we sell X amount of these products per week. Well, what if we discounted these by 50% just to get rid of them? And how much would we need to increase demand to actually get rid of them in, say, the time frame that we wanted? Perfect example of scenario analysis, and a really awesome one. Cool. Okay. So what we might do, I like to keep these, don't like to drag these on unnecessarily. So unless there's some other questions or things that people want to go over, I might wrap things up. Now, just a reminder, I just want to go through. So I just want to go through how you can learn more about Power BI from Enterprise DNA. First of all, I'll be sending the resource that we worked on today, not the resource that is totally done up visually, because that's only going to be for the paid customers of Enterprise DNA. But if you want to become a paid customer, you absolutely can. You just got to check out portal.enterprisedna.co, and there's a range of courses in there. I'll also be sending a link to the definitive guide to Power BI out with the replay. But if you want to learn more about Power BI every weekday, I put videos out on Enterprise DNA TV through YouTube. So if you're not a subscriber, definitely subscribe there. If you want to link up with me on LinkedIn, personally, happy to do that. Just send me a request. Also, I have an Enterprise Power BI LinkedIn group, so make sure you join that, because that's where I post a lot of my thoughts and updates around what's happening with Power BI. And other than that, if you're just beginning with Power BI, make sure to check out the Ultimate Beginner's Guide series, which is at portal.enterprisedna.co as well. Yeah. So and also I plan to. I think I'm going to try and run these webinars every month now. So watch out for any future webinars. Will always be the same sort of format, showcasing some really awesome techniques, scenario analysis. I can see doing a lot more of these, because I think this is basically the most awesome way you can utilize Power BI. So yeah, I think that's about it. Unless anyone's got any more thoughts or feedback, I might just wrap things up now. Expect an email from me in the next few hours with the replay and also the resource and some other information. Thanks for coming along. I know everyone's got a busy schedule, so good to have you along, and hopefully you learned a lot. Hopefully you learned how you can actually implement this yourself, and you can utilize some of the techniques and tips that we went into today. Cool. Okay, signing off, everyone. Thanks a lot. I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Cheers.